Time to take your coding break. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Coding Break podcast. I am your medical coding coach and coding break host, Tam Talk, here to talk about all things medical coding related, which will include the good, the bad, and the ugly of the medical coding industry. On today's episode, I want to talk about working remote. And I know many people are returning to the office space, or, they are going unwillingly, or they're throwing adult temper tantrums because they refuse to go back into the workplace. And I get it. Remote has its benefits, such as the amount of money we save from commuting, the time we're saving from commuting, as well as the money we're saving from having to find work clothes. But on today's episode, I really want to touch on the disadvantages of working remote. So for those of you who have read my book, Remote Coding, Knowing the Requirements, I wrote that book specifically to address the realness or the rawness of working remote. It talks about what is required for an individual to work as a remote coding professional, such as the technical things like the equipment that is needed, the discipline, the time management, all of those characteristics, and again, the technical skills that are needed to work remote. But I also touched on some of the disadvantages of working remote. And there's this one thing my mom used to always tell me. She says, a job gives you more than a paycheck. And I just thought she was just talking about just having a job, being employed. But the older I got, and now that I've returned to the office, I really understand what she means when she said that a job gives you more than a paycheck. To be honest, I didn't realize how lonely I was. If I'm honest with you, I did not realize how lonely I was, or I had become. Now that I'm back in the office and I kind of reflected on that, I realized that, oh wow, yeah, I was lonely. I mean, I did leave my home, but also the amount of time that I spent in front of my computer at home, and the time just, whipped past me, and I realized, oh my God, I didn't even go out the house today, or I didn't interact with the outside world. So anyway, like I said, on this episode, I really want to touch on some of the disadvantages of working remote. So I had my helpful friend AI, or artificial intelligence, to kind of give me some disadvantages of working remote. And of course, the very first one was social isolation and loneliness. And according to AI, it said humans are social creatures, and the lack of daily in-person interaction in the remote setting or in remote work can lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. And also, missing out on casual conversations and spontaneous social interactions can impact mood, motivation, and mental health. So now that I'm back in the workplace, I do find that I'm excited about going to work. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was excited about working remote, because especially like during the holiday season, because I didn't have to get up and go into work while everyone else was home celebrating. And but again, as I mentioned, now that I'm back in the office, I do realize that I do miss those casual conversations, or like someone had mentioned, they miss the opportunity to get up, to go to their colleague in the next cubicle to ask a question, whereas if they were remote, they may post it in a group chat or on Teams and wait for a response. So that is something that I do get, I won't say enjoyment or pleasure, or I have a better appreciation for it now that I'm back in the office, is being able to get a quick response from a colleague in regards to maybe a coding scenario or whatever the work that I'm doing, and I have questions. I'm able to communicate with my colleagues in real time. So the second one is the blurred work-life boundaries. It says working from home can make it harder to separate work and personal life, potentially leading to longer work hours and burnout. And then AI actually pulled from perhaps someone's blog post. It says it's easy to feel the need to be always on or available, making it difficult to fully disconnect and relax. I can attest to that statement. I worked on a project that required me to be online at 5 o'clock in the morning. There were days I did not get off until 6, maybe 7 o'clock in the evening. I was on over 12 hours a day, and I did experience burnout. And again, I was remote. So yeah, I experienced burnout because there was no turn off switch. I couldn't cut it off. Whereas now that I'm in the office, when it's time to go, it is time to go. And I leave, right? And I leave. Whereas when I was working remote, I was rolling out of bed although I was in a different time zone, the time zone in which my colleagues were in, of course, they were ahead of me, but I was on at 5 o'clock in the morning. And like I said, sometimes I didn't get off until 6 or 7 in the evening. So that's 12 hours, 12 hours. Well, yeah, 12 hours. Oh, well, it was a long time online. And again, because that work-life balance line was blurred, it just made it difficult to create a cutoff or a hard stop when it came to logging off from work. So the next one, it says communication challenges. It says an individual lacks face-to-face interaction, or the lack of face-to-face interaction can hinder effective communication, making it harder to convey nuances, build rapport, and brainstorm effectively. This is true. And it also says time zone differences can further complicate synchronous communication and collaboration. I just spoke on that because we were in different time zones, which required me to get up earlier. And again, I was on all day where some of my colleagues may have already logged off and I was still working. So again, it does make it a challenge for communication. And also when you're communicating like via online, and I would even say social media, it's hard for someone to understand like the emotion that comes behind what you post or what you type into a group chat or in Teams or I would say even an email. So it's good to have that face-to-face communication because an individual can pick up the emotions, again, the nuances that comes along with it. And you're also able to effectively brainstorm work projects or, coding scenarios, for example. So number 4 is the distractions and lack of dedicated workspace. So your home environment can present numerous distractions, from household chores to family members or pets, potentially impacting focus and productivity. And again, not everyone has a dedicated quiet workspace, making it challenging to create a separation between work and personal life. Now, this is true. Now, for me, I did have a workspace. So I did have a dedicated workspace. And then again, and as far as children, my children were of age, they knew better, or they were adults or young adults, teenagers, so they were doing their own thing. But I did have my dedicated workspace as well as my dedicated equipment, such as the internet, or Wi-Fi. So that can become a distraction. For example, if you have small children, if you have some pets, if you don't have a dedicated workspace, what may not be a big deal to you or not seem like a major distraction can become a major distraction, because one of the things with coding, just as in any other industry, you're based on productivity. So if you are distracted or have small distractions multiple times a day, that could hinder or affect your productivity in the coding environment. So I do get that one. And then number 5, it says it has a potential impact on career advancement. So for example, let me go ahead and read what it has here. It says remote workers might have less visibility within the organization and fewer opportunities for informal networking, mentorship, potentially impacting career growth. It can be harder to demonstrate initiative and leadership in a remote setting without regular face-to-face interactions. That may be possible, but I did not have that issue. as someone who worked in a remote setting, as I was in leadership in the remote setting. And I can also say that I wasn't trying to pursue higher roles in the remote setting, again, because I was already in leadership capacity of some sort. So I didn't really like push that, or I didn't see that as an issue for me, because again, all of us, the meetings that I had, we were all in leadership. So I didn't see that, but I'm sure that it will affect or have some impact on individuals working remote, because they can't, it may appear that they're unable to provide an impact as it relates to being a leader, again, potentially a hindrance of career growth. But again, when I was in these roles, I was in leadership, so it is possible. It is possible. And then the last one, and I think it kind of ties into what I said about the distractions. And it is technical issues and cybersecurity risks. Like if you don't have the appropriate equipment, it will cause issue one with productivity. And then if you don't have the right equipment, you run risk of cybersecurity issues, which is such as hacking, accessing information that they're not supposed to access. But that's where IT comes into play, I feel. And the organization should have the appropriate IT individuals in place to ensure that there aren't any cybersecurity issues. And then I've worked as a consultant where the organization has actually provided the equipment to me. So that kind of cut down on me having technical issues, again, because the company or the organization provided their equipment to me. And again, that included the computers, laptops, all of the only thing I had to have was, decent Wi-Fi, but the organization provided all the other equipment to me. So yeah, so again, those are just some of the disadvantages that comes with working remote. And like I said, the loneliness and some of these things I didn't realize was specifically the isolation and loneliness one. I didn't realize that I was in that space until I actually went back into the office, and I realized okay, maybe I was lonely, or maybe I was just going through the motions, or maybe I had waves of loneliness, and I was able to step away and kind of combat it or what have you. And then I have, like I said, friends, and I was active in other things outside of the work, such as hobbies. I had small groups and life groups that I was a member of. So it kind of combated or prevented major isolation and loneliness. And then as far as the promotion, like I said, I was already in leadership working remote, so I really didn't see an impact or any issues with that because I was already there. And I also did not seek or pursue a promotion or leadership role or additional leadership roles or activities in the role that I was in. And as far as technical issues, like I mentioned, some organizations did provide the equipment for me. The only thing I had to have was decent Wi-Fi. And yeah, so it worked out. Even in the event where I did not have the organization with the technical equipment, such as the computer, I had the equipment necessary to do my job. So yeah, so these are some things, I would say some practical things you may want to consider if you're seeking to work remote, or if you are remote and looking to go into the workplace or into the on-site location. These are things you want to consider. Like I said, when you're working remote, you want to make sure you have, again, time management skills, because it does require discipline. And again, just as any other industry, working in coding, you are required to meet productivity measures. And so if you lack the discipline, or you have many distractions that will hinder you, it will hinder your productivity quota or measure or what have you, whatever and productivity measures are different for different organizations. So I can't quote a specific productivity measure. Again, it would vary depending on the organization that you work for or work with. What else do we have here? And let's see, like I said, again, technical issues. Again, and also the blurred work-life balance. Again, sometimes if you don't have anything or any hobbies, or if you don't have any hard stops, you run the risk of working and not being able to turn it off. So like I said, for me, time zones was an issue because we were all in different time zones. So again, I was up online at 5 o'clock in the morning and not getting off till, like I said, 6 or 7 in the evening. So that is something, again, that could be a hindrance when it comes to communication. You may be waiting for something, or response, or your colleague may be waiting on a response, and because of the time zones, or and I say time zone because I've worked in that capacity, but it also could be that when you're communicating via text or via group chats, whatever, no one really understands the emotions that's come behind your post or what have you. So unless they know you, they knew you, and they knew your personality prior to you being remote, so they can gauge what your emotions are or what they were. But in the case where they did not, or it's hard to gauge what your emotions are when it comes to working or communicating in the remote setting. So again, these are things that you need to ponder on, think about when you're looking for a coding gig, whether you're looking for a remote coding role or one on site. So I would suggest creating a pros and cons list. One, finding your strengths. Do you have the discipline to manage your time? Are you an effective communicator? Do you know how to set boundaries, or I guess you could say boundaries or parameters, like hard stops when it's time to log off? It's like, do you have healthy work-life balance boundaries? And again, do you have the workspace as well as the equipment to do your job well? And if you can answer yes to all of that, then I would say go for it. If you don't, then you may want to consider or reconsider going back into the office or going into the office when you're trying to look for a coding role. So that's all that I have for this episode or this coding break. I just wanted to touch on the disadvantages of working remote. So that's all that I have for this coding break. And as always, code on. Until next time, toodles.